tutors, mentors, and the city with your host.com.
The City Tutors presents
Tutors, mentors, and the city
with your host.com.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. My name is Kevin.com Brown, and welcome to Tutors, Mentors, and the City. And please join me in welcoming our guest for this episode, Miss Svetlana Bochman. Yay! Svetlana, how are you?
Thanks for having me on the show. I appreciate it.
No, thank you. Thank you so much for making time for us, for myself and the City Tutors and all of our viewers. So, that being said, I don't know how familiar you are with the podcast, but I try to ask my questions from the perspective of the viewers, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, no research, and I get to know you as they get to know you. So my first question would be, Svetlana Bochman, who are you?
Well, I've been a tutor and mentor in New York City pretty much since the beginning of my career, since my college days. I've been a resident of the New York City area since childhood. So I was born in Kyiv in the Ukraine, and I was lucky enough to immigrate to the United States as a refugee from the Soviet Union in the late 70s. And I got to grow up in the Bronx and go to public schools. And I had a lot of great mentors along the way, and I got to attend Columbia University in the city as low-income, first-generation college student who didn't really learn English until about the fourth grade or so. And that's why it's been so great for me to give back and be a tutor and a mentor to English language learners and, economically disadvantaged students and first-generation students. Those students really resonate with me. And after college, I had most of my career at the City University of New York, where I went to graduate school first for a master's degree in English at Hunter College, and then a PhD in English literature at the Graduate Center at the City University of New York. And I've been part of the University of New York ever since. Most recently, I was the director of the Writing and Tutoring Center at City College, where you're based, Kevin. And so in that role, it was really great because I started as a peer tutor back in Columbia, at the English department, helping students one-on-one. And at City College, I was in charge of 40 tutors, and we were doing 8,000 tutoring sessions a year. So we were helping students at scale. And then after I did that for about 6 years, I graduated to the EdTech space, where I became part of this Khan Academy venture called schoolhouse.world, where they're helping students in 100 countries with one-on-one online peer tutoring. And I was helping with tutor development and training in that space. And now they're working with ChatGPT technology, and I'm consulting various startups about, how do you use ChatGPT to help with learning, to prevent cheating, and to kind of promote education in the tutoring and, online space.
Wow. Okay. That is quite a journey.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I have to mention it because you mentioned the Ukraine, and they're in the top of the news now. Mm-hmm. But you left a long time ago.
Yes.
Do you still have connection with people back there?
Well, most of my relatives are here, so I don't really know anyone back in Kiev in the Ukraine. When I immigrated from Kiev, it's a city of about 3 million people. Nobody really knew Kiev or the Ukraine. Everybody knew the Soviet Union. And when we emigrated, we didn't speak English. I come from a working class family, and my dad he was a plumber, and he got manual labor jobs when we came to New York City, and we took up residence in the Bronx, and then he became a plumber like he used to be. And so no one in my family really went to college. But since we emigrated in the late 70s, my family sponsored about 50 relatives, close and distant, from the Soviet Union to come to the United States. And in order to sponsor someone, you have to promise to be legally and financially responsible for them. And we didn't have a lot of money ourselves, but we sponsored first our grandparents, and then the uncles and aunts, and then the cousins, and then more distant relatives. And so thanks to my parents, we have about 50 people that came because of them. So they always taught me kind of the importance of being there for other people and stepping up for other people and kind of giving back to others after, you've become established yourself.
You came to America.
Mm-hmm.
You landed in New York. That was the first stop?
Yeah, that was the first stop, and that's where we stayed. We lived in Brooklyn first, and then we moved to the Bronx, and then my parents kind of moved to a house in New Jersey. But ever since college, I stayed around the city.
It's funny how New Yorkers maneuver through the city, love New York. But there's something appealing about New Jersey. Like New Jersey, New Jersey isn't like if you say I'm going to the East Coast, New Jersey's not a first choice, right? New York is the first choice. But once you spend a little time in New York, you're like, you know what? New Jersey's looking very attractive to me right now.
Yeah, New Jersey gets a bad rap, but there are a lot of nice things about New Jersey as well.
A lot of beautiful.
So my parents kind of fulfilled their dream of having their own house in the Soviet Union. We lived in a communal apartment, so that means when the Soviets took power, they broke up these big apartments, these big 19th century apartments into smaller rooms. So we had a very big apartment, but we had about 20 people living in this apartment and sharing one bathroom. And there wasn't a shower or a tub in the bathroom, but we would go to the communal baths, and you'd pay a small fee and you can kind of wash over there. And there was one kitchen for 20 people. So my parents and I had one room, and that was where we lived. And in other rooms, other families were living, and we all shared the kitchen and the bathroom. And that's kind of how we lived. So when we came to the US and we settled in Bed-Stuy, Brooklyn, and we had a studio to ourselves with our own bathroom and kitchen, we thought that was pretty good. And the organization that helped us, it isn't around anymore, Kevin, but it's called the New York Association for New Americans. And so when we got on the plane, we were only allowed to take a small amount of luggage, and the Soviet government didn't allow you to take any documents with you. They didn't allow you to take photographs with you. They wanted to make it difficult for people to leave. And we had this idea that someone from this organization, New York Association for New Americans, would meet us at the airport and help us get settled. but we weren't really sure that they would be there because the mail was kind of monitored and censored, and we didn't have a telephone. But through other people, through like the underground network, we heard that if you can just get to JFK Airport, there's going to be these people and they're meeting the flights from the Soviet Union. And they're going to help you with a place to stay and food and things like that. And that's what happened. Somebody met us and they spoke Russian, and which is what we spoke, and they took us to like a residence hall, and they helped us out for the first few months.
Wow. Okay. And you started in Brooklyn, and did you go to school in Brooklyn? Like how long did you go to school in Brooklyn?
Well, not long. I actually went to 3 different first grades, and because we moved around a lot. And then finally, we settled in the Bronx. So I went to school in the Bronx until I went to Columbia. And at Columbia, I started as a English and biology major because I was really interested in combining kind of my interest in literature and also my interest in science, and I never really lost that. And that's why now I think it's so interesting with all of this technology coming out that, you know, people can be really creative in the way that they combine things. Because one of the things I hear about when I talk to educators about this new ChatGPT technology as well, it's sort of making it very easy for students to cheat, right? Because you can ask ChatGPT the answer and it'll give you the answer. But that's actually true of any new technology. When the calculator came out, when the computer came out, when the internet came out, the first thing students used it for was, you know, to kind of get around their assignments. But I've also been consulting with some different organizations that have been doing really interesting things in this space. For example, recently at Columbia, I talked to a chemical physics professor who is remaking his tests so that students can't put the answers into ChatGPT and get the answer. So for example, he's asking a chemical physics question, you know, that only by being a student at Columbia could you answer that question. And one of the questions he asked was, how much energy would it take you to walk up the steps of Low Library, that's the main library on campus? So he tried it. Can I put this into ChatGPT? And ChatGPT doesn't know. So the student has to go find out how many steps are there in Low Library, measure the height of the steps, and then use the formulas for energy generation and to get the answer. So it really kind of forces us to rethink, how do we teach our students and how do we motivate our students and things like that. And if I could give you one more example.
Of course.
So Khan Academy, that I've been working with their schoolhouse.world startup, but Khan Academy has this great AI chatbot called Khanmigo, and students can use it while they're learning. So let's say you're an instructor and you assigned your student some, you know, asynchronous, meaning you do it on your own, online homework. And the student asks Khanmigo to give them the answer. So Khanmigo says, that's the chatbot that uses ChatGPT technology. Well, I can't give you the answer. So the student types in, why do I need to learn this, right? Why do I need to learn this physics? And Khanmigo answers, well, what are you interested in learning in? And the student says, well, I'm interested in soccer, right? See what you do with that. And so the chatbot answers, well, actually, if you're interested in soccer, physics can really help you become a better soccer player. And then they give a few paragraphs of how you can learn physics, and you can take your knowledge of physics to become a better soccer player or just better in sports in general, to kind of motivate the student to learn the material, which I think is really interesting. So I think for us, tutors and mentors, there's definitely an aspect of, how do we make sure students aren't cheating with this technology, but also how can we be creative and use this to increase our students' learning? Because if any of the listeners out there have ever taught a group of honors students, with this technology, all of your students are now honor students, right? They're going to have all of these tools at their disposal. It's going to be easier for them to get the answers, but that means they'll have a leg up, and it'll be easier for them to understand the content you're trying to teach.
The way you encapsulated that explanation to a question that everyone has the question, no one's asking it. I didn't hear anybody articulate the question, but you just gave a wonderful answer. I really
thanks, Kevin.
Everyone is an honor student now that you have access to this technology. That is quite a way to put it. And Khan Academy, that sounds pretty fancy. I'm familiar with Khan Academy and its learning technology. And so you, in your work trajectory, you've worked for CUNY, you've worked in the private, I guess we call that the private sector.
Yeah, nonprofit and also the private sector. Right now I'm consulting for a startup located in Silicon Valley, and what they're doing with ChatGPT is they're trying to have people interact with people living or dead through this online system. So if you're a famous person, let's say, or a businessman, and you want to preserve your legacy, you can have this chatbot so that people can continue to chat with you when you don't have time to chat, or even after you're gone. So we had to design a example, for potential customers. And I said, let's have ChatGPT Oscar Wilde, because that's who I wrote my dissertation on in my English PhD. I wrote about Oscar Wilde, and I love Oscar Wilde. And so I worked with some developers to tweak the technology so that when you chat with it, it's as if Oscar Wilde is answering you. So you can ask the Oscar Wilde chatbot things about his own life when he was alive in the 19th century. But one thing we tweaked is you can ask 19th century Oscar Wilde what he thinks about modern times. For example, what do you think about men's fashion nowadays? Or, something like that. And the chatbot can actually answer using all the information that we know about Oscar Wilde. So that's kind of cool.
Yeah, that's really cool. Is that technology available, or is that just in beta form now?
It's in beta form now, but you can use ChatGPT to generate an answer in the form of a historical person, but it's not as accurate as this beta model that we're developing now.
Okay, that is incredible. That is absolutely incredible technology. So you've given me a lot, and I want to. Well, first of all, I want to thank you for your time. Right, I want to thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, you skipped something. You said you attended high school. No, you attended school in the Bronx. Did you say?
Yes. Well, in high school, I actually moved to New Jersey for high school. And that was such a big change because I had gone to public school and junior high school, now called middle school, in the Bronx. So when I was a young teenager, my friends and I were, walking around getting snacks at the corner store, taking the subway. And then suddenly, when I moved to high school and I was a little bit older, I was in this suburban environment. It was really nice, but you can't go anywhere without a car, and you can't do anything without a car. And so I did it. I actually enjoyed living in the Bronx more, than I did living in the suburbs of New Jersey. And the high school I attended in New Jersey, it looked really nice, but it wasn't very strong academically. So I was actually the first person from that high school, and it was established in the 40s at some point, to attend an Ivy League college. So they were really happy about that.
Absolutely. Very impressive. So your journey, very impressive journey. You're saying a lot of things, you know a lot, you're on the cutting edge of what's happening today. What would you say if you could go back to young Svetlana? What advice would you give her?
I think I would tell my younger self not to be so worried about fitting in as an American, because when I immigrated, it was the Cold War in the 80s, and Ronald Reagan was calling the Soviet Union the evil empire. And as a refugee from the Soviet Union, we were against the Soviet Union. We weren't for them, but it seemed like every villain in every movie was from the Soviet Union and looked just like me. And, it was difficult growing up because kids weren't really educated about, who's a commie, who's not a commie, and so they didn't really understand that where I was coming from and what I was about. And so there was also this idea in the 80s and 90s of the melting pot, where you immigrate to the United States and you're supposed to melt into this pot, right? You're supposed to fit in with the American culture. And it took me a while to fit in, and I had to try really hard to fit in. So I think I would tell my younger self that, the background that you have, and I would tell young people today who may come from a different background, who may be refugees and immigrants from other countries, that your background actually, you don't have to melt into the melting pot. You can stand out and you can embrace your background, and it could add, to the diversity of your classroom and where you're working, and you don't have to try to hide who you are. I lost my accent, but my parents still had an accent, and when it was time for them to come to school and speak to the teachers, I was thinking, oh no, they're going to have this Russian accent. It's going to be embarrassing. And now, of course, I'm so proud of my parents. They're retired. They live in Florida now, and everything they achieved, and to be so brave at the age of 30 to come to a different country where not only the culture is different, but you don't know any English, you don't know anybody, you have $100 in your pocket, you don't know where you're going to live, and you're going to bring a little kid with you because you know that the way things were going where you're from, that can't continue, and you want a better life for your kids, and so you have to make this this journey. So I think that was really brave of them, and for that I'd be definitely grateful. I'm definitely grateful, because if I stayed in the Soviet Union, I wouldn't have had the career trajectory I have now, because the reason we were allowed to immigrate is because we are Jews, and so only Jews were allowed to immigrate, and that nationality was written on our passport. So if you look at our passport back in the Soviet Union, it would say Jew on it, so everybody would know, and so there was a lot of discrimination in that respect. So I'm really grateful for my parents for coming here.
Wow, hearing the details of the era, hearing the backstory, things we wouldn't have access to. First of all, that type of discrimination, the propaganda
Right.
that was perpetuated in media to demonize this culture, this group.
Right.
These are things we don't think about. I'm born and raised in this country, and as a black man, my people, we have our share of problems, right? But when you take a glance into someone else's, all you see is what's on the surface. You don't know the what's and the where's and the why's and all that kind of stuff. So that's the things you filled in. Very interesting. I appreciate that.
Well, it's interesting because back in the 80s, all of the teachers in elementary school and middle school, they would always, because the Soviet Union was demonized, they would sort of show anybody from there as sort of the other. For example, they would say, hey kids, we're going to have a vote in our class now because this is the United States and we have free elections here, not like communist Ukraine or, not like in the Soviet Union. And then everybody will kind of turn and look at me like, what do you have to say about that? But what I had to say is that's why we left. And so, I think as educators, we have to be really mindful of, how we talk about other cultures and how we mention them in class, and to make sure that we're actually accomplishing what we're trying to accomplish, because the teachers had good intentions, but they it had like the side effect of kind of ostracizing some students.
Absolutely. Okay. And the thought immediately crossed my mind. Some kids can be mean about everything. Kids are always looking for the thing to get at somebody, to get their own advantage because of their insecurity, and that situation can be very challenging for all of us. Everybody has their thing. So you came to America. You've obviously lived your American dream, right? And you're still,
I feel that way, yeah.
Yes, and you're still living it. It's clear. It's clear you're still living your American dream. You've talked about a lot of things. We've shared a lot of details. Did we leave anything out? Is there anything that you feel like we didn't touch on that's important to you that you want to share before we
sure. I'd like to talk, Kevin, about my journey at City College, because prior to working at City College, after I got my PhD in English from the City University of New York, I worked for a while as a professor of English. I was an adjunct professor, which is kind of like a part-time professor, and I got to teach various courses. I taught at Hunter College for 8 years. And what was great about that is I got to create my own curriculum. So my favorite course that I created at Hunter College was humor in literature, where not only did we teach my favorite author, Oscar Wilde, but we also even did some science fiction, some Douglas Adams, some Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, and all kinds of other funny poems and stories and novels, because my dissertation was about humor and satire. So I really enjoyed that course. And then when I got a job as the Writing and Tutoring Center Director at City College, we had an issue at the Writing Center, because the way the Writing Center works is that students from all over the college, whether they're taking freshman English or they're taking history, or even if they're taking some kind of nursing course or childhood education, they need to write papers. You know, even the science students need to write research papers. And they could bring their paper to the Writing Center, and a tutor sits with them one-on-one and helps them with their paper. But the problem we were having is that professors didn't want to send students to the Writing Center because they were afraid, some professors were afraid that it's sort of like cheating, because you have somebody who's more knowledgeable who's kind of going to make your paper better for you and fix it up for you, and then you bring it back and you're going to get a better grade. And so, you know, I had to, my job as the director was to go around the different departments. I went to the business department, the psychology department, as well as other departments that are not traditionally sending students to get help with their writing, to kind of change the culture and talk to different faculty about the Writing Center. And I kind of did a listening tour where faculty would say, well, this is the problem with the Writing Center, and this is why we don't like to send students there. And one of the issues was they couldn't really tell if the tutoring was working. It's very difficult to tell if writing tutoring is working. Like, I'm also an SAT tutor, and if I tutor a student for the SAT, then I can tell if the tutoring is working because their score goes up, right? So we started to create these metrics. And so I implemented an online data gathering system that kind of captured all of this data on the student, like what class are they coming in for? Who's sending them? What kind of paper do they have? What kind of grade did they get at the end? And then did they pass the course at the end? And did passing this course help them graduate? And we found some amazing things, Kevin. The students that came to the City College Writing Center, their grade for the course would go up by 15% just by coming a couple of times. Then that freshman composition course, which is a really high stakes course, like if you fail freshman composition, you can't really take any other courses after that because it's a prerequisite for a lot of higher level courses. If you got tutoring for that freshman English course, you were 13 times more likely to pass the course. And we didn't know that before. The tutors and everybody who worked there before, they had this feeling, yeah, of course, the tutoring is working, the students are learning, but we had no data. And then we worked with the institutional research department to see, well, what happens to these students after? Well, they're 2 times less likely to drop out of college. Because once you fail that freshman composition course, it's really disheartening, right? You have to take it over again, and it's worth like double the credits. And then you feel like, well, if I can't even take this first course, then maybe I shouldn't be here. You get discouraged. So it was really great to have that metric. And another issue we were having is that students didn't want to come in because they were worried that the tutors who were there, they were peer tutors. So they were students teaching students, and some students were saying, well, how are they going to help me? They're in the same boat as I am, right? So what I did is I changed the model where we still had some peer tutors, but I started to hire more tutors who were professional tutors. And I got a Fulbright scholar to come tutor at the City College Writing Center. I got some Ivy League grads. I got people with law degrees and MBA degrees, and they were all tutoring for minimum wage. And people were saying, Svetlana, how are you getting these people in there to tutor for minimum wage? We can't even get, you know, college students to come in and tutor for minimum wage, because I changed the dialogue from this is an hourly job that students have that, they can do between their classes this is a way for you to give back, just like in City tutors and mentors. Yeah, we'll pay you the wage. We don't want you to be a volunteer because we want you to be accountable. So you'll be on the payroll, but you're not really doing it for the money. You're doing it because you like to give back. Maybe you're interested in education. Maybe you can only commit a couple of hours. And it really changed things around. And then in mentoring the tutors, we had some professional development training for the tutors. And at the end, the tutors who were college students, they went on to get scholarships at Stanford, at NYU Law School. One of them won the Soros Fellowship. So they went on, the tutors themselves, who were City College students, to do amazing things because they tutored at the Writing Center. So that's something I'm really proud of. I had a really great team there, and that was really the best job I ever had. I'll always be grateful to City College.
That was brilliant. That was brilliant.
Thanks.
I use the Writing Center. The Writing Center helped me so much last semester. I'm in college right now, going for a master's.
Oh, great.
And I've used the Writing Center. The technology, we're using Zoom technology now, which has changed the game, but it's very efficient, right? It's very efficient.
Yeah.
I don't know if you had Zoom. You didn't use Zoom or any sort of.
No, we had the online tutoring, but not through Zoom yet.
Okay. So yeah, I use it a lot, and I'm sure your fingerprints are all over the help that I got. So I really appreciate that.
I'm glad to hear that.